Alrighty, Robert. It's been great chatting with you so
Yeah.
far this afternoon. We spoke a little bit as well this morning about the role, the duties and entails, and about the company as well. Now, Robert, you have extensive experience when it comes down in sales. Well
Yeah.
over, I would say, was it 15 to 20 years of experience in sales?
Oh, more than
Um,
that. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Robert, I want to go ahead and hand you the mic. So, tell me a
Okay.
little bit about your professional experience. Let's kind of start off with what I have in the resume, right? You
Okay.
worked at Quail Corporation as well as Staples Technology Solutions. So, tell me
Right.
a little bit about that and we'll go from there.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, when I first started with company, it's all part of the same company because Quill is actually part of Staples. And when I started there with them, I started out in their acquisitions team, which basically was just calling, people that were not, account holders with them, and just would, tell them about Quill, kind of introduce them to the company as well as offer them a, introductory special to get them into, dealing with us. And that position moved into what they called a managed acquisitions, where I basically did kind of the same thing with the customers. But then when I went to place the order, I didn't have to go through customer support. I did the orders myself. And then from there, I moved up to their managed team, where then I had a book of business of existing customers to, work with them to offer them everything that they offer, office supplies, technology, furniture, cleaning and janitorial, and so forth. Um, from there, I stayed in that position until Quill decided to close their office down here in Orlando, to move it all operations up to their Lincolnshire, Illinois office. So, that's when I parted ways with Quill, but I was only gone technically from the company less than a week, because I got offered a position with Staples in the same office because they shared the same office. And then there, all I was doing was technology sales. So, I would have in the beginning, I had a small book of business where it wasn't really any kind of particular field or any particular marketplace. I dealt with all different types of companies. Eventually moved into dealing with healthcare. Um, and then finally, before the layoff, it was working with schools and local, state, and a little bit of federal government as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I appreciate you being so detailed with your explanation when it comes down to your professional experience. Now, you mentioned that you were successful in getting clientele. You had your book of business that you grew. So I want to know your approach when it came down to, was it cold calling? Tell me about your approach overall to getting new leads, or just in generally those cold calls. What was your approach to that?
Well, cold calls, in the beginning with Quill, it was just, they had a list of potential clients that they wanted to see about onboarding to the company, and we would call them, either that or they were companies that had an account with them prior, and for whatever reason they stopped using Quill. So we would call all different types of companies. Again, it wasn't any specific industry; it was all over the place back then. So we would just kind of introduce ourselves, introduce Quill, let them know what we can do, and find out who they were working with currently, and try to see about transitioning them over to Quill. And we would offer them kind of a special to kind of introduce them to the company, and then from there they would onboard, and they would stay, usually stay with the company and continue on. And then once they became a regular customer, they would, depending on their purchasing amounts, they would actually then get an account manager assigned to them. So they would go and move along, and they would take it over the account after that.
That's amazing. Now, of course, with outreach to new leads or even your current clientele,
Mhm.
there's sometimes we have to handle objections. So
Sure.
were you able to overcome those objections?
Well, you have to find out what their pain point is. You have to find out why they're, why they're feeling like they are, because without knowing that, you're not going to be able to help them, because you can push as much as you want of certain things, and if they're not interested, they're not interested. So you got to find out what motivates them to make a change or to actually make their purchases.
Absolutely. And I'm sure you use a few platforms to manage your leads or just overall manage your sales. So what are some systems that you're familiar with?
Predominantly with Staples, the system that they use was Salesforce. So I've been
Okay.
using that for the last, 8+ years. Quill is a little bit different, and I think they had kind of their own system that they did, and they were eventually going to be moving to Salesforce. They just, when I was with them, they hadn't moved over yet. So I'm familiar with, Salesforce. We did calls and different things through Microsoft Teams for, face-to-face meetings or, different things like that. We work emails, we would call them. We would also get leads for new companies that were not dealing with Staples technology. So we would contact them and work our magic, so to speak, and get them to start considering us and using us for their technology after that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know in sales, sometimes we rely heavily, whether it's in person, phone, or email, but how do you tailor communication to each client so that we're not so robotic in each conversation that we have with our clientele or prospects?
Well, I mean, myself, what I did was I would have, a few different templates in my Outlook, so that when I did have to send them an email, even though it was, all this, kind of the same body of the email, I would go and personalize maybe like the first paragraph to, kind of recap of what we talked about, and to get them my information so that when they did have needs or a project come up, they can contact me and reach out to me that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to go back to discussing the products that you were selling, right? You mentioned that you were selling technology. So tell me what kind of product that you were selling, or just overall your sales experience.
Well, I mean, as far as what we sold there, a lot of people didn't realize what Staples could offer. But pretty much everything. I mean, computers, whether it be desktops, laptops, tablets, Chromebooks, servers, printers, scanners. They also did have partners that they worked with that did IT services. So if the customer didn't have their own IT staff and they needed somebody to come out and actually set it up for them, we can do that. We did work with all the major software companies so that we could actually offer that as a solution, whether it be just an individual package software or licensing, depending on how many they were needing.
Amazing. And Robert, my last question for you now is, when are you looking to start a new role?
Immediately.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, Robert, it's been a pleasure speaking to you so far this afternoon. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording, but don't hang up on me. I want to continue chatting with you really quickly.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.